Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. It's TheSketchMonkey here. I'm here at EMIC Volkswagen in Denver to have a look at this. This must be Volkswagen's best-selling EV. So what we're gonna do in this video is have a look at this design, because I think this is a departure from what we normally see from Volkswagen with a very structural and less organic design. This feels a lot more fluid in its shape. So what I wanna do here, yes, we are going to do a couple of redesigns to this car. We're going to redesign the front end just a little bit, a couple of tweaks, specifically in the lower part. Look at the side view, the rear view, the interior, and then we're going to take this for a drive. Let's have a look at some of the basic specs for the 2023 Volkswagen ID.4. You have an 82 kilowatt battery pack, dual motors, 295 horsepower, 328 pound-feet of torque. The range is 255 miles on a single charge. 0 to 60 is done in 5.8 seconds, and this one will cost you $46,000. So starting with the front end design of the ID.4, I kind of like this new approach that Volkswagen is doing with some of their ID cars, not all of them. My favorite ID car from Volkswagen, which I'm sure it's going to go into production, is called the ID.2 All. So what I want to do is have some of that feeling into the front end of this design. For example, have a look at this intake at the bottom and how much of this is actually useful for the cooling of the battery. You do have that only right here in the center part, and all the other pieces right here is all covered up, so we can redesign that and still have the same function of the lower part of the graphics. We're gonna come back to the redesign in just a second, but before we do that, let's talk about the top end graphics of the ID.4. I want to hear your opinion. Are you a fan of this more fluid design from Volkswagen, or do you prefer the more Golf-like structure design that we've had pretty much up until now, even today in the internal combustion engine versions? As I said, it's cool that Volkswagen is experimenting with this design. We do have one single light bar going across here. Then you have the LED light in this section. So coming back to the lower part of the front end of the ID.4, we do have some functional air vents here, which I think is really cool to add, not just cover this up with some black plastic. Makes it look like it has some sort of expression instead of just covering everything up. So what I want to do here in this redesign, I want to work a little bit on the lower section here and add some more structure to this design, take some inspiration from the absolutely stunning ID.2 All, which is my favorite ID car up until today. So have some more of that structured lines and solidness in the front end that we're used to seeing from Volkswagen in the front end of the ID.4. Coming around to the side view of the ID.4, and here we have the same kind of fluidness that we have in the front end coming around to the side as well in this car. So the wheels here are 19-inch. You can get this with the 20-inch. If you know me by now, you do know that I would go definitely with the 20-inch wheels. It might reduce the range a little bit, but it just looks so much better. The width in the rear are 255s, and you have 235 wide tires in the front end. Having a look at the line flow of the ID.4 in the side view, this feels almost like a Mazda-ish, or more of an Asian design philosophy than Volkswagen. That's another detail that I want to change here. It's not going to be a detail, it's going to be a pretty substantial redesign. For example, you see this line here and how it goes up straight over the door handles and then curves over the rear axle, and then we have this line being even more dynamic than the lower section. So what I want to do is just straighten these lines out and have it be more in line, as I said, with the ID.2 All concept. For me personally, I think that just suits the Volkswagen better to have those type of lines for this type of car. I do realize that they made it this way to have it be as slippery and as bubbly as possible, but then we have the Ioniq 5, which looks like two blocks put together and still has a pretty decent range. One detail or one line that I do love about the ID.4 here is the roof line, and this is one line that I don't think I'm going to change because I really think it looks fantastic with the sloping roof line. And then we have this black graphic here, which again, for Volkswagen, I think this feels too organic. I want to have more of a sharp corner up here and also a sharp corner in this area, ending it a little closer to the side view than the rear. But other than that, as I said, Volkswagen is trying different things with their EVs, and they're trying to do different type of styles, morphing into more organic side views in front and rear. So let's have a look at the rear view and see what's going on there. Now, can you guess what view of the ID.4 is my personal favorite view? And yes, you're correct, this is my favorite view. This is a 3/4 rear view. Still a couple of things back here that I want to change, but I'm glad that they actually put in a full light bar here. Here it goes all across. It cuts out a little bit by the VW logo here, which by the way is not chrome, it's set in black and white, which I think looks really good. It fits this car, and then it continues of course to the other side with some dynamic feeling of the lower section of the taillights here. We do have a different thickness in the side, going into a bit of a thinner piece at the lower part. Let's have a look at the lower section of the ID4 and what's going on down here with this big plastic piece. And this is a detail that I do want to change just a little bit. I also want to remove this wiper. I want this wiper to be, I think it has the space to be housed underneath this beautiful spoiler up top. So let's move this up here, clean the top part out because it's already very clean looking at this section. Talking about the lower piece here, so this is where it gets a little tricky for me when we look at this big plastic piece that we have going here with these additional wings. We do have some reflector lights here, so I'm glad they put that instead of adding some fake vents in the very corners of the car. But I do like the top half of this. Is just some stuff in the lower part that I want to redesign. All right, so these are the changes I want to make to the lower section of the ID4. By the way, I like that there's no chrome back here. Even the ID badge in the middle is actually white, and then you have the black and white logo above that. But down here, this is where I said it gets a little tricky for me. So what I want to do, basically, make a bit of some body color down here. The same silver that we have here, I want to have that framing some of the lower part in this section. And I also want to, I think I'm going to remove these wings here. I don't think they have a function, not visually or practically, in the rear end. So let's remove the wings, lower the car a little bit by adding some body color at the very end point of the truck or of the SUV. And I think it's going to add more of that Volkswagen-ness to this design. Welcome to the interior of the ID4, and in here it's pretty clean, to be honest. You have a 5.3 inch, you do have some sort of a gauge cluster in this car. I appreciate that it didn't went the route that Tesla is doing, just cleaning everything up in the interior. And then you have a pretty well integrated as well here, the 12-inch screen. I think it works well. You have some touch controls for pretty much everything is touch control in here, but you do have the fast buttons to go to these menus that you want to go with. For example, you have this button here for the climate control, and then it's pretty intuitive with the graphics here, how you use all the functions and the software in this car. You have all the functions and buttons for where you want the air to blow, for example, max AC if you want the AC on and off. You have the heated seats with this button, 3 different levels, and you also have all the radio settings in the screen. I would like to have some of these settings, of course, being physical buttons. As you know, you have the drive mode here as well. So you have Eco, Comfort, Sport, Traction, and then you have the custom mode as well, so you can program whatever you want the car to be like when you click the custom button. And you also have some driving assist settings here when you click the assist button with some pretty nice graphics in here. You have your ID4 in the correct color. I'm not sure if that's just lucky that the car is silver in the software, but this car, the exterior is also silver, as you know. So looking at the gauge cluster here, and it feels like a pretty basic gauge cluster. You do have the speed, you do have how much range you have left, and which gear you're in, and how you select the gear is also very interesting. You just swivel this control up here so you don't push up or down like I'm used to seeing in EVs. Instead, you just swivel this thing, and then you have the parking brake right here on the side. Moving further down, looking at these vents, very easy to adjust these vents. There's no problems here at all to just angle the air exactly where you want the air to come out from. Moving to the center console, you do have some storage underneath here because we don't have a transmission tunnel that needs to go all the way through the car. So you have a lot of storage space, pretty much. You have some space underneath the center console with 2 cup holders here. You do have wireless charging for your phone with this flap that's going to hold your phone in place. I think that's actually a really good idea, and I haven't seen that in any other car. So having this flap to hold the phone in place, I think that's a good idea. With 2 USB-C ports, lifting this armrest up, which by the way has some nice resistance to it. Look at this. This feels pretty high quality and it's not flimsy at all. Down here you do have just a regular storage space with no connectivity or USBs or anything like that, but it is a very comfortable and leather wrapped center armrest. Looking up top, you have the functions for the lighting, for example. I accidentally hit the service button right here. This is service button, so it calls your dealer or whoever that is connected to. Fortunately, it's not connected to anything right now, so it didn't call anybody, but you do have the light settings here, and the lights are very nicely integrated LEDs up there. No sunroof in this ID4, as you know. I don't care about that, it looks good. On the left side of the steering wheel, you have all the settings for the lights and some more climate settings up here as well, with an additional vent here that is pretty easy to use, very much like the ones we have over there and here in the center. Looking at the steering wheel design, I'm not sure if I like these buttons better than I like physical buttons, because when you click these, you can't really tell that they are buttons, but when you click them, you can feel that tactile feel, a bit of a vibration when you hit the buttons. It feels pretty nice, and you have all the controls for the radio on the right spoke, and all the controls for the cruise control is located right here on the left. Overall, it's a pretty nice looking steering wheel with a flat bottom, and you have this silver trim going around it that comes back into the interior as well. And down here you have a proper sized glove box. You can fit a bunch of markers and big pens in. Looking at these seats, look very basic. I like that it's cloth in the middle, then you have leather on the sides. I'm not against cloth seats at all. Sometimes I actually think I prefer cloth seats in some cars, and I think this one might be one of those cars. It just looks good. The design is good. You have some not crazy bolstering on the side, but I think this is enough to take some corners if you want to go do some sportier driving. Looking at the door panels, same thing there. It's a very simplistic design that doesn't really, this interior doesn't really feel like it connects with the exterior. It's more structured in here, and that goes for the doors as well. We still have the silver trim up top and some gloss black on the area where you're gonna have your arms and hands on a lot. So I'm not sure if I want to have that be matte black and not have a bunch of fingerprints all over the place. This is the same gloss black that we have in the inside here as well. So with that said, we've talked about the front end of the interior. Let's jump in the back seat and see if I can fit behind my own driving position. All right, so jumping into the back seat, behind my own driving position, you can see just how much space I have. This is almost like a Ford F-150 space for me back here. Also with the headroom, plenty of space. You do have a bit of a pocket in the middle, and you have the vents back here. You don't have separated climate controls in this specific ID4, but you do have some very easily adjustable vents with a couple of USB in the bottom and a bit of a storage space right here for your favorite 2 or 3 markers. All right guys, taking a drive in the 2023 Volkswagen ID4. This is the all-wheel drive version. This is the version I would personally pick. You have 295 horsepower, which is not bad for this type of package. This is a good EV if you're just getting into EVs and want to have a feel for how EVs drive and so on. It's not too aggressive in the driving modes. I think I have it in, let's put it in sport and just see how much aggressiveness we can get from this. The reason I would go for the all-wheel drive is, first of all, it's Colorado. You don't know the weather, so you want to have all-wheel drive. At least I do. And then you have the power as well, 295 horsepower compared to the dual mode, single motor, which does 0 to 60 in about 7.5 or something like that. This though goes down to 5.8, which I think it's not bad for what it is and for this price point, starting at $46,000. I don't have any foot on the pedals or the brakes, and the regen is decent, but I would want to have it a little bit more aggressive than that, because I think it makes sense. Why not add more charge to the car? And you also have one pedal driving when you have that. All right, so let's see what this got if we floor it here and use all that 295 horsepower with the 4-wheel drive. It feels pretty good. It pulls like you would expect an EV to pull. There's not a lot of drama in this Volkswagen, and I think that's also a selling point, because not everybody wants a super fast EV all the time. This is a good, as I said, a good first EV if you want to get into the EV game and see what they're all about with the charging and how they drive with the one pedal driving and so on. I think it's a good idea to get into this ID4 first. I do like the screen setup here. I don't mind having just this I think it's 5.2 or something like that, the gauge cluster. At least we have something there compared to the Tesla that has absolutely nothing. You have everything in this screen right here. And this, as I said, this screen also feels pretty well integrated in the overall design. And it feels like Volkswagen put a bit of effort into designing this car, both in the exterior, as we talked about. I think it's a new design philosophy. Maybe they're trying something new with the more organic shapes on the outside. Not exactly what we're used to seeing from Volkswagen, but I do think they need to they need to go in one line when it comes to the design, because we have the ID2 All, which has this Golf feel to it, which I'm a huge fan of, and I really hope Volkswagen is going to build that car. But then you have these type of vehicles, the ID4, which is a lot more organic. So I would rather them pick a route for their design to go, and I would want that route to be the more sharp, a little bit more boxy design. One thing I do think that every single EV manufacturer, the biggest problem, it might be the range and it might be the charging. This has a 255-mile range, which is okay, but the biggest challenge that I think EV manufacturers have is just the driving experience. And you need to somehow feel connected with the car like you do in an internal combustion engine. And it's a very tricky challenge, because it's very hard to figure that out, because we don't have all the noises and everything that goes on in an internal combustion engine. These are perfect commuter cars from A to B, but when it comes to that enthusiasm, it's very hard to capture that in an EV. Huge thanks to EMIC Volkswagen in Denver. If you're interested in this car, just click the link down in the description. I will link this car in their full inventory. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.